Chapter 7 of The Shortstop. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Rowdy Delaney, Idaho, USA. The Shortstop by Zane Gray. Chapter 7. Mittie Maru. Chase, you hung bells on 'em yestiddy. Among the many greetings Chase received from the youngsters swarming out to the grounds to see their heroes whip wheeling, this one struck him as the most original and amusing. It was given by Mittie Maru, the diminutive hunchback who had constituted himself mascot of the team. Chase had heard of the boy and had seen him the day before, but not to take any particular notice. "Let me carry your bat." Chase looked down upon the sad and strange little figure. Mittie Maru did not exceed a yard in height. He was all misshapen and twisted, with a large head which was set deep into the hump on his shoulders. He was only a boy, yet he had an almost useless body and the face of an old man. Chase hurriedly lifted his gaze, thinking with a pang of self-reproach how trifling was his crooked eye compared to the hideous deformity of this lad. "3 straight from Wheeling is all we want," went on Mittie Maru. "We'll skin the coal diggers all right. And we'll be out in front trailin' a merry ha-ha for Columbus. They're leadin' now, and of all the swelled bunches I ever seen. Put it to us for 3 straight when they was here last. But we got a bad start. Then I got sick and couldn't report, and somehow the team couldn't win without me. Yesterday was my first day for I don't know how long, since Columbus trimmed us." "What was the matter with you?" asked Chase. "Aw, nothin'. Just didn't feel good," replied the boy. "But I got out yesterday to see what you done to Kenton. Say, Chase, you takes mighty long steps. It ain't much wonder you can cover ground." Chase modified his pace to suit that of his companion, and he wanted to take the bat, but Mittie Maru carried it with such pride and conscious superiority over the envious small boys who trooped along with them that Chase could not bring himself to ask for it. As they entered the grounds and approached the door of the clubhouse, Mac came out. He wore a troubled look. "Howdy, Mittie." "Howdy, Chase," he said in a loud voice. Then, as he hurried by, he whispered close to Chase's ear, "Look out for yourself." This surprised Chase so that he hesitated. Mittie Maru reached the dressing room first, and turning to Chase said, "Somethin' doin', all right." This soon manifest, for as Chase crossed the threshold, a chorus of yells met him. "Here he is. Now say it to his face. Salver, Jollier, you mushy soft soaper." Then terms of opprobrium fell about his ears so thickly that he could scarcely distinguish them, and he certainly could not understand why they were made. He went to his locker, opened it, took out his uniform, and began to dress. Mittie Maru came and sat beside him. Chase looked about him to see Winters lacing up his shoes and taking no part in the vilification. Benny was drunk. Meade's flushed face and thick speech showed that he too had been drinking. Even Havil made a sneering remark in Chase's direction. Chase made note of the fact that Thatcher, Cass, and Spear, one of the pitchers, were not present. "You're a Molly," yelled Meade. "Been makin' up to the reporters, haven't you? Fixin' it all right for yourself, eh? Playin' for the newspapers? Well, you'll last about a week with Findlay." "What do you mean?" Chase demanded. "Go on," shouted the first baseman. "As if you hadn't seen the Chronicle." "I haven't," said Chase. "Flash it on him," cried Meade. Someone threw the newspaper at Chase, and upon opening it to the baseball page he discovered his name in large letters. And he read the account of yesterday's game, which, excepting to mention Cass's fine pitching, made it seem that Chase had played the whole game by himself. It was extravagant praise. Chase felt himself grow warm under it, and then guilty at the absence of mention of other players who were worthy of credit. "I don't deserve all that," he said to Meade, "and I don't know how it came to be there." "You been salvin' the reporter, jollyin' him." "No, I haven't." "You're a liar." A hot flame leapt to life inside Chase. He had never been called that name. Quickly he sprang up, feeling the blood in his face. Then as he looked at Meade, he remembered the fellow's condition, and what he owed to Mac, and others far away, with the quieting effect that he sat down without a word. A moment later Benny swaggered up to him and shook his fist in his face. "I'm a goin' to take a bing at your one skylight and shut it for ye." Chase easily evaded the blow and rose to his feet. "Benny, you're drunk." Matters might have become serious then, for Chase, undecided for the moment what to do, would not have overlooked a blow. But the gong ringing for practice put an end to the trouble. The players filed out. Mittie Maru plucked at Chase's trousers and whispered, "You ought to have handed him one." Chase's work that afternoon was characterized by the same snap and dash which had won him the applause of the audience in the Kenton games, and he capped it with 2 timely hits that had much to do with Findlay's victory. But 3 times during the game, to his consternation, Mac took him to task about certain plays. Chase ran hard back of second and knocked down a base hit, but which he could not recover in time to throw the runner out. It was a splendid play, for which the stands gave him thundering applause. Nevertheless, as he came to the bench, Mac severely reprimanded him for not getting his man. "You've got to move faster'n that," said the little manager, testily. "You're slow as an ice wagon." And after the game Mac came into the dressing room, where Chase received a good share of his displeasure. "Didn't you say you knew the game? Well, you're very much on the pizzazz today. Now, next time you hit up a fly ball, don't look where it's going, but run. Keep on running. Fielders muff flies occasionally, and some day running one out will win a game. And when you make a base hit, don't keep on running out to the foul flag just because it's a single. Always turn to second base and take advantage of any little chance to get there. If you make any more dumb plays like that, they'll cost you 5 each. Got that?" Chase was mystified and in no happy frame of mind when he left the grounds. Evidently what the crowd thought was good playing was quite removed from the manager's consideration of such. "Hold on, Chase," called Mittie Maru from behind. Chase turned to see the little mascot trying to catch up with him. It suddenly dawned on Chase that the popular idol of the players had taken a fancy to him. "Say, Cass told me to tell you to come by his room at the hotel after supper. I wonder what he wants. Did he say?" "No, but it's to put you wise, all right, all right. Cass is a good feller. Me and him has been friends. I heard him say to Mac not to roast you the way he did. And I want to put you wise to something myself. Mac's stuck on you. He can't keep a smile off his face when you walk up to the plate. And when you cut loose to peg one across he just stutters. Oh, he's stuck on you all right, all right. Boys, will you look at that wing? He keeps sayin'. And when you come in he says you're rotten to your face. Don't mind Mac's roasts." All of which bewildered Chase only the more. Mittie Maru chattered about baseball and the players, but he was extremely reticent in regard to himself. This latter fact, in conjunction with his shabby appearance, made Chase think that all was not so well with the lad as might have been. He found himself returning Mittie Maru's regard. "Good bye," said Mittie Maru at a cross street. "I go down here. See you tomorrer." After supper Chase went to the hotel, and seeing that Cas was not among the players in the lobby, he found his room number, and with no little curiosity mounted the stairs. "Come in," said Cas, in answer to his knock. The big pitcher sat in his shirt sleeves, blowing rings of smoke out the open window. "Hello, Chase. Was waiting for you. Have a cigar. Don't smoke? Throw yourself round comfortable, but say, lock the door first. I don't want anybody buttin' in." Chase found considerable relief and pleasure in the friendly manner of Findlay's star pitcher. "I want to have a talk with you, Chase. First, you won't mind a couple of questions?" "Not at all. Fire away." "You're in dead earnest about this baseball business?" "I should say I am." "You are dead set on making it a success?" "I've got to." Chase told Cas briefly what depended on his efforts. "I thought as much. Well, you'll find more than one fellow trying the same. Baseball is full of fellows taking care of mothers and fathers, and orphans too. People who pay to see the game and keep us fellows going don't know just how much good they're doing. Well, Chase, it takes more than speed, a good eye, and a good arm, and a head to make success." "How so?" "It's learning how to get along with managers and players. I've been in the game for 10 years. Most every player who has been through the mill will let the youngster find out for himself. let 'em sink or swim. Even managers will not tell you everything. It's baseball ethics. I'm overstepping it because I want to. I don't mind saying that you're the most promising youngster I ever saw. Mac is crazy about you. All the same, you won't last 2 weeks on the Findlay team, or a season in fast company, unless you change." "Change? How?" "Now, Chase, don't get sore. You're a little too soft for this business. You're too nice. Lots of boys are that way, but they don't keep so and stay in baseball. Do you understand me?" "No, I don't." "Well, baseball is a funny game. It's like nothing else. You've noticed how different the players are off the field. They'll treat you white away from the grounds, but once in uniform, look out. When a professional puts on his uniform, he puts on his armor. And it's got to be bulletproof and spike proof. The players on your own team will get after you, abuse you, roast you, blame you for everything, make you miserable, and finally put you off the team. This may seem to you a mean thing, but it's a way of the game. When a new player is signed, everybody gets after him, and if he makes a hit with the crowd, and particularly with the newspapers, the players get after him all the harder. In a way, that's a kind of professional jealousy. But the main point I want to make clear to you is the aggressive spirit of the players who hold their own. On the field, ball playing is a fight all the time. It's good natured, and it's bitter earnest. Every man for himself, survival of the fittest, dog eat dog." "Then I must talk back, strike back, fight back?" "Exactly. Else you will never succeed in this business. Now, don't take a bad view of it. Baseball is all right. So are the players. The best thing is that the game is square, absolutely square. Once on the inside, you'll find it peculiar, and you've got to adapt yourself." "Tell me what to do." "You must show your teeth, my boy, that's all. The team is after your scalp. Apart from this peculiarity of the players to be eternally after someone, I'm sure they like you. Winters said you'd make a star if you had any sand. Thatcher said if you lasted, you'd make his batting average look sick. One of them, I think, has it in for you, just because he's that sort of guy. But I mention no names. I'm not a knocker. And let me tell you this, never knock any lad in the business. The thing for you to do, the sooner the better, is to walk into the dressing room and take a punch at somebody. And then declare yourself strong. Say you'll punch the block off any one who opens his trap to you again. And after that, you'll find it different. They'll all respect you. You'll get on better for it. Then you'll be one of us. Play hard, learn the game, keep sober, and return word for word, name for name, blow for blow. After a little of this, chewing the rag becomes no more to you than putting on your uniform. It's a part of the game. It keeps the life and the ginger in you." "All right. If I must, I must," replied Chase, and as he spoke, the set of his jaw boded ill for someone. "Good. I knew you had the right stuff in you. Now, one more thing. Look out for the players on the other teams. They'll spike you, knee you, put you out if they can. Don't ever slide to a base head first, as you did today. Some second baseman will jump up and come down on you with both feet, and break something or cut you all up. Don't let any player think you're afraid of him, either." "I'm much obliged to you, Cas. What you've told me explains a lot. I suppose every business has something about it a fellow don't like. I'll do the best I can, and hope I'll make good, as Mittie Maru says." "There's a kid with nerve!" exclaimed Cas enthusiastically. "Best fan I ever knew. He knows the game, too, poor little beggar." "Tell me about him," said Chase. "I don't know much. He turned up here last season and cottoned to the team at once. Someone found out that he run off from a poor house or home for incurable boys or bad boys or something. There was a fellow here from Columbus looking for Mittie, but he never found him. He has no home, and I don't know where he lives. I'll bet it's in some garret somewhere. He sells papers and shines shoes, and he's as proud as he's game. You can't give him anything. Baseball he's crazy over. So is my brother, and he's a cripple too. Every boy likes baseball, and if he doesn't, he's not a boy." Chase left Castorious then and went downstairs, for he expected to meet several of the young men who boarded with him, and who had invited him to spend the evening with them. They came presently and carried him off to an entertainment in one of the halls. Here his new friends, Harris, Drake, and Mandel, led him from one group of boys and girls to another, and introduced him with evident pride in their opportunity. It was a church fair and well attended. Chase had never seen so many pretty girls. Being rather backward, he did not very soon notice what was patent to all, that he was the young man of the hour, and when he did see, he felt as if he wanted to run away. Facing Mac and the players was easier than trying to talk to these gracious ladies and whispering, arch-eyed girls. Ice cream was the order of the evening, and as long as Chase could eat he managed to conceal his poverty of speech. But when he absolutely could not swallow another spoonful, he made certain he must get away. When 4 girls in white vivaciously appropriated him and whirled him off somewhere, his confusion knew no bounds. His young men friends basely deserted him and went to different parts of the hall. He was lost, and he gave up. From booth to booth they paraded with him, all chattering at once. He became vaguely aware that he was spending money, and attaching to himself various articles. He caught himself saying he would like very much to have this and that, which he did not want at all. The evening passed very quickly and like a dream. Chase found himself out of the bright lights in the cool darkness of the night. He walked 2 blocks past his corner. He reached his room at length, struck a light, and saw that he had an armful of small bundles and papers. He made the startling discovery that he had purchased 4 lace-fringed pincushions, a number of hand-painted doilies, 1 sewing basket, 1 apron, 2 match scratchers, 1 gorgeous necktie, and 1 other article that he could not name. Discomfited as he was, Chase had to laugh. It was too utterly ridiculous. Then, more soberly, he began to count the money he had, in order to find out what he had spent. The sum total of his rash expenditures amounted to a little over $5. $5! Ejaculated Chase. For this truck and about a gallon of ice cream? That's how I save my money? Confound those girls! But Chase did not mean that about the girls. He knew the evening had been the pleasantest one he could remember. He tried to recollect the names of the girls and how they looked. This was impossible. Nothing of that wonderful night stood out clearly. As a whole, it left a confused impression of music and laughter, bright eyes and golden hair, smiles and white dresses. The next morning he wrote to his mother and told her all about it, adding that she must not take the expenditure of his money so much as an instance of reckless extravagance as it was a case of highway robbery. In the afternoon, on the way to the ball park, he met Mittie Maru and related last night's adventure, asked him if he could use a pincushion or 2. "Not on your life," cried Mittie Maru. "Sorry I didn't put you wise to them church sociables. They jobbed you, Chase. Sold you a lot of bricks. You want to fight shy of that bunch, all right, all right. Don't you ever go to church?" "I went to Sunday school last fall. Miss Marjorie, she was in the school. She got me to come. She's a peach, sweeter'n a basket of red monkeys. She was all right, but I couldn't stand for the preacher and some of the others, so I quit. And every time I see Miss Marjorie I dodge or hit it up out of sight." "What was wrong with the preacher?" "He's a young'un. I think preachers oughter be old. He fusses with the women folks too hard. He speaks soft and prays to beat the band, and everybody thinks he's an angel. But oh, I ain't a knocker. Wait for me after the game." "Sure." "And Chase, are you going to stand for the things Meade calls you?" "I'm afraid I can't stand it much longer." If anything, Chase's reception in the dressing room was more violent than it had been the day before. Nevertheless, he dressed without exchanging a word with anyone. This time, however, he was keenly alert to all that was said and to who said it. All sense of personal affront or injustice, such as had pained him yesterday, was now absent. He felt himself immeasurably older. He coolly weighed this harangue at him with the stern necessity of his success, and found it nothing. And when he went out upon the field he was conscious of a difference in his feelings. The mist that had bothered him did not come to his eyes, nor did the contraction bind his throat, nor did the nameless uncertainty and dread oppress his breast. He felt a rigidity of muscle, a deadliness of determination, a sharp, cold confidence. The joy of playing the game, as he had played it ever since he was big enough to throw a ball, had gone. It was not fun, not play before him, but work that called for strength, courage, endurance. Chase gritted his teeth when the umpire called play ball, and he gritted them throughout the game. He staked himself and all he hoped to do for those he loved against his own team, the opposing team, and the baseball world. He saw his one chance, a fighting chance, and he meant to fight. When the ball got into action he ran over the field like a flash. He was everywhere. He anticipated every hit near him. He scooped up the ball and shot it from him with the speed of a bullet. He threw with a straight, powerful overhand motion, and the ball sailed low, with terrific swiftness, and held its speed. He grabbed up a hit that caromed off Winter's leg, and though far back of third base, he threw the runner out with time to spare. He caught a foul fly against the left field bleachers. He threw 2 runners out at the plate, and that from deep short field. He beat out an infield hit. He got a clean single to right, and for the 3rd time in 3 days he sent out a liner that by fast running he stretched into a 3-bagger. Findlay had clinched the game before this hit, which sent in 2 runners, but for all that, the stands and bleachers rose in a body and cheered. The day before, Chase had doffed his cap in appreciation of their applause. Today he did not look at them. He put the audience out of his mind. But for all his effort, speed, and good luck, he made an unfortunate play. It came at the close of the 8th inning. Wheeling got runners on second and third with only 1 out. The next man hit a sharp bouncer to Chase. He fielded the ball, and expecting the runner on third to dash for home, he made ready to throw him out. But this runner held his base. Chase turned to try and get the batter going to first, when the runner on second ran right before him toward third. Chase closed in behind him, and as the fellow slowed up, tried to catch him. Then the runner on third bolted for home. Chase saw him and threw to head him off, but was too late. In the dressing room after the game, the players howled about this one run that Chase's stupidity had given Wheeling. They called him Woodenhead, Saphead, Spongehead, Deadhead. Then Mac came in and delivered himself. "Put the ball in your pocket. Put the ball in your pocket, didn't you? Countin' your money, wasn't you? Thinkin' about the girls you was with last night, hey? That play cost you 5. See? Got that? You're fined. After this, when you get the ball and some runner's hittin' up the dust, throw it. Got that? Throw the ball. Don't keep it. Throw it." When the players' shouts of delight died away, Chase turned on the little manager. "What'd you want for 15 cents? Canary birds?" he yelled in a voice that rattled the windows. He flung his bat down with a crash, and as it skipped along the bench, more than one player fell over himself to get out of its way. "Didn't I say I had to learn the game? Didn't you say you'd show me? I never had that play before. I didn't know what to do with the ball. What do you want, I say? Didn't I accept 9 chances today?" Mac looked dumbfounded. This young lamb of his had suddenly roused into a lion. "Sure, you needn't holler about it. I was only tellin' you." Then he strode out amid a silence that showed the surprise of his players. Winters recovered first, and turned round red-faced and began to bob and shake with laughter. "What did he want for 15 cents? Canary birds? Ha, ha, ha!" In another moment the other players were roaring with him. End of chapter 7. Chapter 8 of The Shortstop. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Rowdy Delaney, Idaho, USA. The Shortstop by Zane Gray. Chapter 8. Along the River. Castorious blanked the Wheeling Club the next day, and the following day Spear won his game. Findlay players had returned to their old form, and were getting into a fast stride, so the Chronicle said. 3 straight from Columbus was the slogan. Mac had signed a new pitcher, a left-hander named Polk, from a nearby country village, and was going to develop him. He was also trying out a popular player from the high school team. Mac had ordered morning practice for the Columbus series of games. The players hated morning practice, drill they called it, and presented themselves with visible displeasure. And when they were all on the grounds Mac appeared with a bat over his shoulder, and with his two new players in tow. Poke was long and lanky, a sunburned rustic who did not know what to do with his hands and feet. "Battin' practice," called out Mac sharply, ordering Poke to the pitcher's box. Poke peeled off his sweater, showing bare arms that must have had a long and intimate acquaintance with axe and rail pile. "Better warm up first," said Mac. It developed that Poke did not need any warming. When he got ready he wound himself up, and going through some remarkable twist that made him resemble a cartwheel, he delivered the ball towards the plate. Thatcher just dodged in time to save his head. "Speed! Whee! Wow!" exclaimed the players. "Speed!" echoed Thatcher. "Wait till you get up there." Poke drove Thatcher away from the plate and struck Meade out. "Put 'em over," said Benny as he came up. The first ball delivered hit Benny on the foot, and roaring, he threw down his bat. "You rube! You wild Indian! I'll get you for thet!" Enoch Winters was the next batter. "Say, you lean, hungry lookin' rubberneck, if you hit me," warned Enoch in a soft voice. Poke struck Enoch out and retired Chase on a little pop-up fly. Then Cas sauntered up with his wagon-tongue bat and a black scowl on his face. Steady up, he said. "Put 'em over. Don't use all your steam." "Mister, I ain't commenced yet to throw hard," replied Poke. "What?" yelled Cas. "Are you kidding? Slam the ball. Break your arm, then." The rustic whirled a little further round, unwound himself a little quicker, and swung his arm. Cas made an ineffectual attempt to hit what looked like a white cord stretched between him and the pitcher. The next ball started the same way, but took an upward jump and shot under Cas's chin. Cas, who had a mortal dread of being hit, fell back from the plate and glared at Poke. "You've got his alley, Poke," cried the amiable players. "Keep him under his chin." Cas retired in disgust as Mac came trotting up from the field where he had been coaching the high school player. "What's he got?" asked Mac eagerly. "What's he got?" yelled the 9 players in unison. "Oh, nothin'." "Step up and take a turn," said Mac to his new player. "No, don't stand so far back. Here, let me show you. Gimme the bat." Mac took a position well up to the plate and began illustrating his idea of the act of hitting. "You see, I get well back on my right foot, ready to step forward with my left. I'll step just before he delivers the ball. I'll keep my bat over my shoulder and hit a little late so as to hit to right field. That's best for a hit and run game. Now watch. See? Step and set. Step and set. The advantage of getting set this way is the pitcher can't fool you, can't hit you. You needn't never worry about being hit after you learn how to get set. No pitcher could hit me." Then, raising his voice, Mac shouted to Poke, "Hey, poke up a couple. Speed 'em over, now." Poke evidently recognized the cardinal necessity of making an impression, for he went through more wonderful gyrations than ever. He lunged forward with the swing he used in getting the ball away. Nobody saw the ball. Bump! A sound not unlike a suddenly struck bass drum electrified the watching players. Then the ball appeared rolling down Mac's shrinking person. The little manager seemed to be slowly settling to the ground. He turned an agonizing face and uttered a long moan. "My ribs! My ribs! He hit me!" gasped Mac. Chase, Poke, and the new man were the only persons who did not roll over and over on the ground. That incident put an end to the morning drill. After dressing, Chase decided to try to find Mittie Maru. The mascot had not been at the last 2 games, and this fact determined him to seek the lad. So he passed down the street where he had often left Mittie, and asked questions on the way. Everybody knew the hunchback, but nobody knew where he lived. Chase went on until he passed a line of houses and got into the outskirts of the town, where carpenter shops, oil refineries, and brickyards abounded. Several workmen he questioned said they saw the boy almost every day, and that he kept on down the street, toward the open country. Chase had about decided to give up his quest when he came to the meadows and saw across them the green of a line of willows. This he knew marked a brook or river along which a stroll would be pleasant. When he reached the river he saw Mittie Maru sitting on a log patiently holding a long crooked fish pole. "Any luck?" he shouted. Mittie Maru turned with a start, and seeing Chase, cried out: "You old son of a gun! Trailed me, didn't you? What are you doing out here?" "I'm looking for you, Mittie." "What fer?" Chase leaped down the bank and seated himself on the log beside the boy. "Well, you haven't been out to the grounds lately. Why?" "Aw, nothin'," replied Mittie, savagely. "See here, you can't string me," said Chase, earnestly. "Things aren't right with you, Mittie, and you can't bluff it out on me. So I've been hunting you. We're going to be pards, you know." "Are we?" Chase then saw Mittie's eyes for the first time, and learned they were bright, soft, and beautiful, giving his face an entirely different look. "Sure, and that's why I wanted to find you, where you lived, and if you were sick again." "It's my back, Chase," replied Mittie, reluctantly. "Sometimes it hurts worse." "Then it pains you all of the time?" asked Chase, voicing a suspicion that came to him from watching the boy. "Yes, but it ain't bad today. Sometimes Hold on, I got a bite. See? It's a whopper. Thunder! I missed him." Mittie Maru rebaited his hook and cast it into the stream. "Fishin' for mine when I can't get to the ball grounds. Do you like fishin', Chase?" "Love it. You must let me come out and fish with you." "Sure. There's good fishin' for catfish and suckers and once in a while a bass. I never fished any before I came out here, and I missed a lot. You see, movin' round ain't easy for me. Gee, I can walk, but I mean playin' ball or any games the kids play ain't for me. I take mine out in fishin'. I've got so I like sittin' in the sun with it all lonely around, 'cept the birds and ripples. I used to be sore about my back and things, but fishin' has showed me that I could be worse off. I can see and hear as well as anybody. There, I got a bite again." Mittie Maru pulled out a sunfish that wriggled and shone like gold in the sunlight. "That's enough for today. I ain't no fish hog. Chase, if I show you where I live, you won't squeal. Of course you won't." Chase assured him he would observe absolute secrecy, and together they mounted the bank and walked up the stream. The meadows were bright with early June daisies and buttercups. The dew had not yet dried from the clover. Blackbirds alighted in the willows, and larks fluttered from the grass. They came presently to an abandoned brickyard, where piles of brick lay scattered round, and two mound-like kilns stood amid the ruins of some frame structures. "Here we are," said Mittie Maru, marching up to one of the kilns, and throwing open a rudely contrived door. The dark aperture revealed the entrance of this singular abode. "You don't mean you live in this oven?" ejaculated Chase. "Sure, and I've lived in worse places. Come in and make yourself to home." Mittie Maru crawled into the hole, and Chase followed him. It was roomy inside. Light came in from the chimney hole in the roof, and also on one side where there was a crack in the bricks. The floor was clean and of smooth sand. A pile of straw and some blankets made Mittie Maru's bed. A fireplace of bricks, a few cooking utensils, and a box cupboard told that he was his own housekeeper. "This is not bad. How long have you lived here?" I fooled around in town for a while last summer, spendin' my money for swell lodgin's, and then I found this place. Makes a hit with me." "But when you're sick, Mittie, what do you do? How do you manage?" "Out of sight, and I ain't no bother to no one." And that was all Mittie Maru would vouchsafe concerning himself. They came out after a while, and Chase wanted to walk farther up the river. Rolling meadows stretched away to the hills. There was a grove of maples not far off. "It's so pretty up that way. Can't we go further on and strike another road into town?" "Sure, but them meadows and groves is private property," said Mittie, dubiously. "I used to fish up that way till I threw Miss Marjory down, and then I quit. She lives in one of them grove houses. We ain't likely to meet no one, though, so come on." They crossed several fields to enter the grove. The river was narrow there and shaded by big trees. Violets peeped out of the grass. A white house gleamed in the distance. Suddenly they came round a huge spreading tree to a green embankment. A boat rode in the water, one end lightly touching the sand, and in the boat was a girl. Her eyes were closed, her head rested on her arm, which hung over the side. A mass of violets lay in her lap. All about the boat was deep shade, but a gleam of sunshine filtering through the leaves turned the girl's hair to gold. Mittie Maru uttered a suppressed exclamation and bolted behind some bushes. Chase took a step to follow suit, when the girl opened her eyes and saw him. She gave a little cry, which rooted Chase to the spot. Then, because of the movement of the girl, the boat left the sand and drifted into the stream, whereupon Mittie Maru returned valiantly to the scene. "Miss Marjorie, don't be scared. It's all right. We'll get you in." "Where's the oars? Chase, you'll hev to wade in. The water ain't deep. Come here, the boat's goin' close to this sandbar." Chase became animated at Mittie's words, and hurriedly slipping off his shoes and stockings, he jumped to the sand below and waded out. Deeper and deeper the water grew, till he was far over his knees. Still the boat was out of reach. He could tell by feeling with his foot that another step would plunge him over his head, and was about to swim when Mittie came to the rescue. He threw a long pole down to Chase. "There, let her grab that, and pull her in." Chase extended the pole, and as the girl caught it he saw her eyes. They were dark blue and smiled into his. "Careful!" shouted the pilot above. "Don't pull so hard, Chase. This ain't no tug o' war. There, all right." When Chase moored the boat, Miss Marjorie gathered up the violets and lightly stepped ashore. Then an obvious constraint affected the three. She murmured a low "thank you," and stood picking the flowers. Chase bent over his shoes and stockings with a very flushed face, and Mittie Maru labored with sudden and painful emotions. "Miss Marjorie, it 'peared like we pushed the boat out, me and Chase, but that ain't so. We was walkin' this way. He wanted to go in the grove, and all at onct we spied you, and I ducked into the bushes." "Why? Are you afraid of me, Mittie Maru?" she asked. "Yes. No, it ain't that, Miss Marjorie. Well, no use lyin'. I been keepin' out of your way for a long time now, 'cause I knew you'd have me in Sunday school. Now you will come back, won't you?" "I s'pose," he said with resignation, then looked at Chase. "Miss Marjorie, this is my friend Chase, Findlay's new shortstop." "I met the new shortstop last week," was the demure reply. "Miss Marjorie, you didn't sell Chase none of them gold bricks at the church sociable." "No, Mittie, but I sold him 5 plates of ice cream," she answered, with a merry laugh. "Your friend has forgotten me." Mittie Maru regarded Chase with a fine contempt. Chase was tongue-tied. Somewhere he had indeed seen those deep blue eyes. They were like the memory of a dream. "Miss," stammered Chase. "Miss Dean, Marjorie Dean. I met so many girls. I didn't really have time to get to know anybody well." Mittie Maru watched them with bright, sharp eyes, and laughed when Chase broke into embarrassed speech again. "Finest time I ever had. I told Mittie about it, how they sold me a lot of old maid things. I sent some of them to my mother, and I asked Mittie if he could use a pincushion or two. I've been hunting Mittie all morning. Found him fishing down here. He's got the cutest little den in a kiln at the old brickyard below. He lives there. It's the coziest place." Mittie had administered to Chase a series of violent kicks, the last of which had brought him to his senses. "Chase, you peached on me. You give me away, and you said you wouldn't." "Oh, Mittie, I'm sorry. I didn't think," cried Chase in contrition. "Is it true?" asked Marjorie with grave eyes. "Sure, and I don't mind your knowin'. Really I don't, if you'll promise not to tell a soul." "I promise." "Will you let me come to see you?" "I'd be tickled to death. You and Chase come to call on me. I'll catch a mess of fish. Won't that be fine?" Marjorie's long lashes fell. The sound of a bell came ringing through the grove. "That's for me. I must be going. Good bye." Chase and Mittie watched the slight blue clad figure flit along the path in and out among the trees to disappear in the green. "And I promised to go to Sunday school again," muttered Mittie Maru. End of Chapter 8. Chapter 9 of The Shortstop. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Rowdy Delaney, Idaho, USA. The Shortstop by Zane Gray. Chapter 9. On the Road. At 6 o'clock on the 12th of June, the Findlay Baseball Club, 15 strong, assembled at the railroad station to begin a 2 weeks' trip on the road. Having taken 3 games from Columbus, and being now but a few points behind that team, they were an exceedingly lively group of young men. They were so exuberant with joy that they made life a burden for everybody, particularly for Mac. The little manager had trouble enough at home, but it was on the road that he got his gray hairs. "Sure, Cas, you ain't after taking that dog again?" asked Mac. Castorious had a vicious-looking beast, all head and jaws, under his arm. "Dog!" roared Cas, insulted. "This is a blooded bull terrier pup. Course I'm going to take him. We can't win the pennant without Algy." "Algy? Is that his name?" burst out Mac, who had already exhausted his patience. "That's a fine name for a mongrel brute. He's uglier than a mud fence." As Mac concluded, a rat ran across the platform. Algy saw it, and with a howl wriggled out of his master's arms and gave chase. The platform was crowded with people, of whom ladies made up the greater part. Algy chased the rat from under the trucks, and between the trunks, right into the crowd. Instantly a scene of great excitement prevailed. Women screamed and rushed frantically into each other's arms. Some fell over their grips. Several climbed upon trunks. All of them evinced a terror that must have had its origin in the movements of the escaping rat, not the pursuing pup. And the course of both animals could be marked by the zigzag line of violent commotion in the crowd. Presently a woman shrieked and seemed to sit down upon a moving object, only to slip to the floor. Algy appeared with the rat between his jaws. "It was a cinch he'd get it," yelled Cas. He gathered up the pup and hid it under his coat. Line up! Line up!" shouted Mac as the train whistled. The players stepped into a compact wedge-shaped formation, and when the train stopped in the station they moved in orderly mass through the jostling mob. Ball players value a rest to tired legs too much to risk standing up, and even in the most crowded stations always board the train first. "Through to the Pullman!" yelled Mac. Chase was in the seventh heaven of delight. He had long been looking forward to what the players called "on the road," and the luxurious Pullman suited his dreams of travel. He and Winters took a seat opposite a very stout old lady who gazed somewhat sourly at them. Havil and Thatcher were on the other side of the aisle. Cas had a seat in the forward end, Mac was behind, and the others were scattered about. There were some half-dozen passengers besides, notable among whom was a very tall, thin, bald-headed man sitting in front of Havil. Chase knew his fellow players too well by this time to expect them to settle down calmly. On the road was luxury for ball players. Fast trains, the best hotels, all expenses paid, these for a winning baseball team were things to appreciate. Chase settled back in the soft cushioned seat to watch, to see, to enjoy every move and word of his companions. "Where will we sleep?" he asked Winters. "Never on a sleeper?" Chase smiled and shook his head. Then Enoch began to elaborate on the beds that were let down from the ceiling of the car, and how difficult they were to get into and out of, especially the latter in case of fire, which broke out very frequently on Pullmans. "And if anybody yells fire, you skedaddle to the fire escape," concluded Enoch. "Fire escape? On a train? Where is it?" queried Chase, wonderingly. "Don't you know where the fire escape is?" asked Enoch, in innocent surprise. His round owl eyes regarded Chase in a most kindly light. "Well, you ask the porter. He'll take and show you." Straightway Chase forgot it in the interest of other things. The train was now in smooth, rapid motion. The fields and groves and farms flashed by. He saw the conductor enter the car and stand by Cas. Cas looked up and then went on calmly reading his paper. "Tickets," said the conductor sharply. Cas paid not the slightest attention to him. "Tickets," repeated the conductor, getting red in the face. He tapped Cas not lightly on the shoulder. "What?" demanded Cas. "Your ticket. I do not wish to be kept waiting. Produce your ticket." "I don't need a ticket to ride on this bum road." The conductor looked apoplectic. He reached up and grasped the bell cord. "Your ticket, or I'll stop the train and put you off." "Put me off? I'd like to have a tintype of your whole crew trying to put me off this train." Mac came into the car, and divining how matters stood, hurried forward to produce his party ticket. The conductor, still in high dudgeon, passed on down the aisle. "Good evening, Mr. Conductor. This is fine weather for travelin'," said Enoch, in his soft voice. The conductor glanced keenly at him, but evidently disarmed by the placid round face and kind round eyes, replied in gracious affirmation. Enoch whispered in Chase's ear, "Wait till the crew finds Cas's bulldog. Don't miss that." Some 30 miles out of Findlay the train stopped at a junction. A number of farmers were lounging round the small station. Enoch raised the window and called one of them. "Hey, what's the name of this place?" he asked of the one who approached, an angular, stolid rustic in overalls and top boots. "Brookville, mister," was the civil reply. "Brookville? Well, I swan! You don't say! Fella named Perkins live here?" "Yep, Hiram Perkins." Hiram Perkins, my old friend." Enoch's round face beamed with an expression of benign gratitude, as if he would, were it possible, reward the fellow for his information. "Tell Hiram his old friend Cy Hayrick was passin' through and sends regards. Well, how's things? Plowin' all done? You don't say. An' corn all planted? Do tell. An' the ham trees grown all right?" "What?" questioned the farmer, plainly mystified, leaning forward. "How's your ham trees?" "Never heerd of sich." "Wal, doggone me. Why, over in Indianer our ham trees is sproutin' powerful. An' how about bees' knees? Got any bees' knees this spring?" The rustic stretched his long neck. Then, as the train started off, Enoch put his head out of the window and called, "Rubberneck! Rubberneck!" The stout lady in the opposite seat plainly sniffed her disgust at these proceedings on the part of a grown man. His innocent round stare in no wise deceived her. She gave him one withering glance, adjusted her eyeglasses, and went on reading. Several times following that, she raised her hand to her face as if to brush off a fly, but there was no fly. She became restless, laid aside her magazine, and rang for the porter. "Porter, close the window above. Cinders are flying in on me." "Window's closed, ma'am," returned the porter. "Something is most annoying. I'm being stung in the face by something sharp," she declared testily. "Beggin' yo' pawdon, ma'am. Yo' sho is mistaken. There's no flies or musketeers in my car." "Don't I know when I'm stung?" The porter, tired and crushed, wearily went his way. The stout lady fumed and fussed, and fanned herself with a magazine. Chase knew what was going on, and was at great pains to contain himself. Enoch's solemn owl face was blank, and Havil, who was shooting shot and causing the lady's distress, bent a pale, ministerial countenance over his paper. Chase watched him closely, saw him raise his head at intervals when he turned a leaf of his paper, but could see no movement of his lips. He became aware presently, when Havil changed his position, that the attack was now to be directed on the bald-headed man in the forward seat. That individual 3 times caressed the white spot on his head, and then, looking in the air all about him, rang for the porter. "Porter, drive the flies out of the car." "There ain't no flies, suh." "Don't talk back to me. I'm from Georgia. Blacks don't talk back to me where I live." "Yo' might be from a hotter place than Georgia, suh, for all I care," replied the porter, turning at last, like a trodden worm. "I am annoyed. Something has been dropping on my head. Maybe it's water. It comes dot, dot, like that." "'Spect yo's dotty, suh," said the negro, moving off. "And you sho ain't the only dotty passenger this trip." The bald man resumed his seat. Unfortunately, he was so tall that his head reached above the seat, affording an alluring target for Havil. Chase, watching closely, saw the muscle along Havil's jaw contract, and then heard a tiny thump as the shot struck much harder than usual. The gentleman from Georgia jumped up, purple in the face, and trembled so that his newspaper rustled in his hand. "You hit me with something," he shouted, looking at Thatcher, for the reason, no doubt, that no one could associate Havil's sanctimonious expression with an untoward act. Thatcher looked up in great astonishment from the book in which he had been deeply interested. The byplay had passed unnoticed, so far as he was concerned. Besides, he was ignorant in Havil's genius in the shot shooting line, and he was a quiet fellow anyway, but quick in temper. "No, I didn't," he replied. The Southerner repeated his accusation. "No, I didn't, but I will jolt you one," returned Thatcher, with some heat. "Gentlemen, this is unseemly, especially in the presence of ladies," interposed Havil, rising with the dignity of one whose calling he appeared to represent. "Most unseemly. My dear sir, calm yourself. No one is throwing things at you. It is only your imagination. I have heard of such cases, and fortunately my study of medicine enables me to explain. Sometimes on a heated car a person's blood will rise to the brain, and, probably because of the motion, beat so as to produce the effect of being lightly struck. This is most often the case in persons whose hirsute decoration is slightly worn off, in the middle, you know." The gentleman from the South sputtered in impotent rage, and stamped off toward the smoking car. "Dinner is served in the dining car ahead," called out a white clad waiter, and this announcement hurried off the passengers, leaving the car to the players, who had dined before boarding the train. Time lagged then. The porter lit the lights, for it was growing dark. 4 of the boys went into the smoker to play cards, and the others quieted down. After a while the passengers returned from the diner, and with them the porter, who began making up the berths. Chase watched with interest. "Let's turn in," said Enoch. "It's a long ride, and we'll be tired enough. Some of us must double up, and I'm glad we're skinny." Enoch boosted Chase into the upper berth and swung himself up. "Take off your outer clothes," said Enoch, "and be comfortable." Chase found it very snug up there, and he lay back listening to the smooth rush of the train as it sped on into the night. And before long he fell asleep. When he awakened the car was dark, though a faint gray light came through the window above him. He heard somebody walking softly down the aisle, and wondered who it could be. The steps stopped. Chase heard a sound at his feet, and rose to see an arm withdraw between the curtains. He promptly punched Enoch in the side. Enoch groaned and rolled over. "Some of the boys stealin' our shoes," whispered Chase. "It's the porter wantin' 'em to shine," said Enoch sleepily. Then he raised his head and listened. "Yep, it's the porter. I'm glad you woke me. Now listen, you'll hear somethin' funny. Cas always smuggles his bull pup into the car and hides him from the porter, and then puts him to sleep at the foot of the berth. That porter will be after Cas's shoes pretty soon." At intervals of every few minutes the porter's soft slipshod footsteps could be plainly heard. He was making toward the upper end of the car. "It's comin' to him," whispered Enoch tensely. A loud, savage, gurgling growl burst out of the stillness, and then yells of terror. A terrific uproar followed. Bumpings and bangings of a heavy body in the aisle, sharp whacks and blows, steady, persistent growling, screams of fright from the awakened women, wild peals of delight from the ball players. Above all, the yelling of the porter. These sounds united to make a din that would have put a good-sized menagerie to blush. It ended with the unlucky negro making his escape, and Cas coaxing his determined protector back into the berth. By and by silence once more reigned in the Pullman. Chase, having had his sleep, lay there as long as he could, and seeing it was broad daylight, decided he would crawl over Enoch and get out of the berth. By dint of some extraordinary exertions he got into his clothes and shoes. Climbing over Enoch was no difficult matter, though he did not accomplish it without awakening him. Then Chase parted the curtains, put his feet out, turned and grasped the curtain pole, and balanced himself momentarily, preparatory to leaping down. The position was awkward for him, and as he loosened his knee hold he slipped and fell. One of his feet went down hard into a very large, soft substance that suddenly heaved like a swelling wave. As Chase rolled into the aisle, screams rent the air. "Help! Help! Thieves! Murder! Murder! Murder!" He had fallen on the fat woman in the lower berth. Chase saw a string of heads bobbing out of the curtains above and below, and heard a mighty clamor that made the former one shrink by comparison. The conductor, brakeman, and porter rushed in. Chase tried to explain, but what with the wails of the outraged lady and the howls of the players, it was impossible to make himself heard. He went away and hid in the smoking car till the train stopped near Steubenville, where they were to change for Wheeling. When the Findlay team had all stepped off the Pullman, leaving the porter enriched and smiling his surprise, it was plain to Chase that he had risen in the regard of his fellow players. "Say, Chase, you're comin' on. You'll do, old man. It was the best ever. The fire escape, my lad, is not in a lady's berth. Go on, what are you givin' us? You kicked her in the stomach just by accident? Go on." Chase found it impossible to make the boys believe that he had fallen from the upper berth and had stepped on the poor lady unintentionally. The run along the Ohio to Wheeling was a beautiful one, which Chase thoroughly enjoyed. It was his first sight of a majestic river. During the ride Mac sat beside him and descanted on baseball in general and base running in particular. "Chase, a lad as fast as you ought to make all these catchers crawl under the bench. Now, listen to me. To get away quick is the secret. It's all in the start. Of course, depend on some coachin', but use your head. Don't take too big a lead off the base. Fool the pitcher and catcher. Make 'em think you ain't goin' down. Watch the pitcher and learn his motion. Then get your start just as he begins to move. Before he moves is the time, but it takes practice. Run like a deer, watch the baseman, and hit the dirt feet first and twist out of his way. But pick out the right time. Of course, when you get a hit and run sign, you've got to go. Don't take chances in a close game. I say don't as a rule. Sometimes a darin' steal wins the game, but there's time to take chances and times not to. Got that?" "Mac, where's the bat sack?" asked one of the players when they arrived at Wheeling. "Sure, I forgot it," said Mac blankly. "I'll have to buy some bats." "You ought to be in the bush league," said one. "How do you expect us to hit without our bats?" asked another. "Did you forget my sticks?" cried Thatcher, championship hitter utterly lost without his favorite bats. Player after player loomed up over the little manager and threatened him in a way that would have convinced outsiders he had actually stolen the bats. Mac threw up his hands in wordless disgust and climbed into the waiting bus. To Chase, riding to the hotel, having dinner, dressing for the game, and then a long bus ride out to the island grounds were details of further enjoyment. Findlay was a great drawing card, and the stands were crowded. Chase was surprised to hear players spoken of familiarly, as if they were members of the home team. "That's Castorious, the great pitcher. There's old man Hicks, but say, he can catch some. See, that's good old Enoch, the coacher. Where's the new shortstop? The papers say he's a wonder." Chase moved out of hearing then and began picking over the new bats Mac had bought. Enoch came up and looked them over too. "Bum lot of sticks," he commented. "Say, Chase, Wheeling is a swell town to play in. The fans here like a good game and don't care who wins. The kids are bad, though. Look out for them. This is a good ground to hit on. You ought to be able to lambast a couple today. If Finnegan pitches, you wait for his slow ball and hit it over the fence." Findlay won the game 6-1. Castorious was invincible. Dude Thatcher hit one over the right field fence, and Chase hit one over the left field fence. The crowd cheered lustily after each of these long drives. When the players piled into the bus to ride back to the hotel, Chase saw them bundling up their heads in sweaters and soon divined the cause. His enlightenment came in the shape of a swiftly flying pebble that struck him in the head and made him see stars. As the bus rolled out of the grounds, Chase saw a long lane lined with small boys. "Whip up your horses, you yahoo!" yelled Cas. "We're off!" shouted another. "Duck your nuts! Low bridge! Down with your noodles!" Then a shower of stones, mud, apples, and tin cans flew from all sides at the bus. The players fell on the floor and piled upon one another, in every way trying to hide their faces. Chase fell with them, and squeezed down as well as he could to avoid the missiles. It was a veritable running of the gauntlet, and lasted till the plunging bus had passed the lines and distanced the pursuers. Then came the strenuous efforts imperative to untangle a dozen or more youths of supple bodies. Only the fortunate players who had been quick enough to throw themselves to the floor first had escaped bruises or splotched uniforms, and they were hardly better off because of the smashing they had received. "Gee, I got a lump on my head all right," said Chase. "That was sweet as ridin' to slow music. Wait till we strike Kenton." That evening after supper, while Chase was sitting in front of the hotel, Cas whispered to him to look out for tricks. He spent the evening in and around the lobby and kept his eyes open. Nothing happened, and at 10 o'clock he went upstairs to find his room. He unlocked the door and opened it, to be deluged with a flood of water from overhead. Next a bucket fell on him and almost knocked him down. Shivering and thoroughly drenched, he fumbled on the bureau, finally found matches and struck a light. A bucket, 2 sticks, and a string lay on the floor in a great pool of water. "One of the tricks," muttered Chase, with chattering teeth. He locked his door, closed and fastened his transom, plugged the keyhole, and then felt reasonably safe. For a long time there were mysterious goings on in that part of the hotel. Soft steps and subdued voices, snickerings, with occasionally a loud, angry noise, attested to the activity of those who were playing the tricks. Chase finally got to sleep and had a good night's rest. In the morning, as he came out from breakfast, he found most of his team assembled as usual in the lobby. "Hev a good night, Chase?" asked several. "Fine. Little wet, though, early in the evening," replied Chase, joining in the general laugh. "Watch for Brill. Don't miss it," said somebody. Brill was one of the pitchers, a good player, quiet in his demeanor, and a rather unknown quantity. He was a slow, easy going Virginian. Presently he appeared on the stairs, came down, and with pale face and deliberate steps he approached the players. "Mawnin', boys," he said in his Southern drawl. "I shore hev somethin' to say to you all. I don't mind the ice water, an' I don't mind the piller somebody hit me with, but I'll tell you all right now, the feller that put thet there leapfrog in my bed is goin' to git licked." Brill never found out who put the leapfrog in his bed. Wild horses could not have dragged the secret from his comrades. That evening, when the players were sitting in front of the hotel with their chairs tipped back, a slight, shabbily dressed woman with a dark shawl over her head approached and timidly asked for Mr. Castorious. "Here I am, ma'am. What can I do for you?" replied the pitcher, rising. "My husband sent me, sir. Jim Ayers he is, sir, and he used to work in Findlay where he knew you," she said in a low voice. "He wants to know if you'll help him, lend him a little money. We're in bad need, sir, and I've a baby. Jim, he's been out of work, only got a job last week, and the second day he was run over by a team." "I read about it in the papers," interrupted Cas. "Yes, I remember Jim." "He said you'd remember him," she went on eagerly. "Jim, he had friends in Ohio. He oughtn't never to have left there. He hasn't done well here. Jim's the best fellow. He's been good to me, and never drinks except when he's down on his luck." Cas gently turned her toward the light. She was only a girl, pale, worn, sad. "Sure, I remember Jim," said Cas hurriedly. "Fine fellow, Jim was, when he left off drinking. I'll lend Jim some money, Mrs. Ayers, if you'll promise to spend it on yourself and baby." The young woman hesitated, then with a wan, grateful smile murmured, "Thank you, sir, I will." "Now you just go round the corner and wait." Castorious led her a few steps toward the corner. When she had gotten out of sight, he took a roll of bills from his pocket, and detaching one, put it in his hat. "Dig up," he said, thrusting his hat under Mac's snub nose. "Cas, you're easy. You remember Ayers, don't you?" replied Mac. "I do. He was strictly N.G., a booze fighter, an all around scamp. I wouldn't give him the price of a drink. But that girl, his wife, did you see her face?" "I did," growled Mac, with his hand moving slowly toward his pocket. "Dig up, then." Mac dug, and generously. The tall pitcher loomed over Thatcher. "Can you spare the price of a few neckties to aid a poor woman?" he asked, sarcastically. "I can," instantly replied the dude, throwing a bill into Cas's hat. "Ball players fight out rivalries even in their charities." Cas glanced grandly down on the dude, and then passed to Havil. "The pot's opened for 5," he said to Havil. Next to shooting shot, Havil liked best a game of poker. In a flash he had contributed to the growing fund. "I'm in, and it costs 2 more to play," he replied. "Hicks, come on." "Cas, I'm broke, and Mac won't give me a cent till Saturday night," answered Hicks. "Borrow, then," rejoined Cas, curtly. He threw his roll of bills into the catcher's lap. Chase and several other players were ready for Cas, and so escaped calumny. Enoch mildly expostulated. "I'm gettin' tired of bein' buncoed this way," he remarked. "Produce. Ain't you the captain? Don't you draw the biggest salary? Produce," went on the inexorable Cas. "But Cas, you're always helpin' some beggar or other." "Wha-at?" demanded Cas, hotly. "It was only last week you touched the team for a nigger hobo. Produce." Enoch meekly produced. "What's the matter?" inquired Benny, lounging out of the hotel door. As usual, he was under the influence of drink. "Hol' on, Cas. Gee, what's all the dough for? Lemme in." "Never mind, Benny," Cas replied. "Just raising a little collection for Jim Ayers' wife. Remember Jim? Got drunk with Jim many a time. Hol' on there. What's the matter? Is my money counterfeit?" Benny was the most improvident of fellows. He seldom had any money, and his bad habit excluded him from many of the plans and pleasures of his comrades. "Say, Benny, this isn't a matter of the price of a beer," replied Cas, moving toward the corner. Benny straightened up. "You're only kiddin' me. If I thought you meant that for an insult, say, I'm just as much a sport and gentleman as you any day." Thereupon Benny soberly thrust his hand into his pocket, pulled out a bill and some silver, soberly turned the pocket inside out to get the small change, and with great dignity dropped all the money into Cas's hat. End of chapter 9. Chapter 10 of the Shortstop. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Rowdy Delaney, Idaho, USA. Chapter 10. Marjorie and Pond Lilies. It was July 2nd, and Chase was happy. Many things had occurred to make him so. Summed up, they made a great, beautiful whole. The team had won 14 straight victories before dropping a game to Columbus, and had come home in first place. He had kept up his good work, especially at the bat. Friends he had made everywhere. What a rousing welcome Findlay had given its team on homecoming. On the first of the month he had drawn $100 and sent it home to his mother. While in Columbus, Mac had taken him to see a surgeon, a wonderful specialist, who had injected something into the corner of his crooked eye, had cut a muscle or ligament, and then bound a little black cap over the eye, cautioning him to wear it till a certain time. Chase had managed to play with only one eye, but now the time was up. That morning he had temporarily slipped off the black cap to find he did not recognize the straight glanced, clear eyed person in the mirror. Then there was another thing, which, though he would hardly admit it to his own consciousness, had more than all else added a brightness to his day. An exceptionally large and enthusiastic audience had attended yesterday's game, and in the grandstand, sitting among a merry crowd of young people, he had seen golden hair and blue eyes that he knew. He looked again to make sure. It was Marjory. And the whole grandstand seemed to grow gayer and brighter. The shrill cries of the excited rooters had a joyous ring. The very sky and field took on a warmer color. The wonder of wonders was that at a critical stage of the game, when by fast sprinting he scored a run and was passing by the stand, he looked up to catch wonderfully in all the sea of faces and waving hats a smile meant for him. Even the abuse of his fellow players, renewed doubly since the homecoming, had no power to affect him after that smile. And a significant remark of Mittie Marew's had further enhanced the spell. "I've fixed it fer you, all right, all right. You mosey out along the river, see?" Chase had turned hot and cold at Mittie's speech, had lamely questioned him further, but nothing more, except elaborate winks, could be elicited from the mascot. And all this was why Chase was happy and roaming wild in the meadows. It was a soft, warm summer morning. The larks were turning their black spotted yellow breasts to the sun and singing their sweet songs. Chase tramped and tramped, and ever resolutely tried to turn away from the maple grove along the river. But every circle led that way, and he found himself at last in the shade of the trees. Through the bushes he caught a glance of the cool river, and then he saw a boat, and a glimpse of blue and a gleam of gold. He tried to run away, but he could not. His steps led him down the sandy path to the huge old maple. "Good morning, Mr. Chase. Why, aren't you lost?" Marjory's blue eyes regarded him in laughing surprise. Chase had a vague thought that somehow he was lost, but all he could think of to say was that the weather was fine for the time of year. "It is lovely," she said. Then he had a brilliant thought, and he wondered why it had not come sooner. "Were you going to row?" "Oh, yes. I always row every morning." "Might I would you I like to row." "You do? How nice. Then you must row me up to the meadow pond where the lilies grow." Chase awkwardly got into the boat. Whatever was wrong with his hands and feet? When he had seated himself and straightened the oars he began to row. She was very close to him. He had not looked up, but he saw her little feet and the blue hem of her gown. "You're rowing into the bank," she said. "Why, so I am." Hastily he turned out and then was careful to row straight. The boat glided smoothly and silently. The little river meandered between high green banks. Tall trees cast shadows on the water. Here were dark patches of shade, there golden spaces of sunshine. Birds were flitting and singing. "Have you seen Mittie Maru?" asked Chase. "Yes, indeed, lots of times. I've seen his den and fished with him, and we've rowed after pond lilies and had fine times together." What was there in her simple, kind words to make him feel so strangely toward Mittie? Of course he was glad she had been with Mittie, but somehow the gladness was an entirely new thing. All at once he discovered he was sorry that the Findlay team had to play games on the road. If it had not been for that, he could have helped her give Mittie a good time. "Here's the pond," said Marjory. "It's very shallow, so you must be careful or we'll stick in the mud." Chase saw that the river widened out into a large basin. There were islands and bogs and piles of driftwood. The green and gold and white of pond lilies sparkled on all sides. The place was alive with birds and water denizens. Kingfishers resented the invasion. Water wagtails skimmed the surface and screamed plaintive cries. Turtles splashed off stumps and frogs plunked under the lily pads. Snakes sunned themselves in bright places, and a great gray crane stood solemnly on one leg and watched. "I want a pink one," said Marjory, after Chase had gathered a mass of dripping lilies. He rowed around the pond and at last located a lily of the desired color, but he could not reach it from the boat. He stepped out upon a log and stretched as far as he could reach. "Oh, you'll fall in!" cried Marjory, in sweet solicitude. Chase slipped off the log and went in with a great splash. The water came up to his waist. He managed by grasping a branch to avert a worse disaster, and securing the coveted pink lily, climbed back upon the log and so got into the boat. "You shouldn't have done that," she said. "It's nothing. I'll dry in a little while." Then they both laughed. Chase rowed back to the bank and placed the boat so that Marjory was in the shade of an overhanging grapevine, and he sat out in the sun. Somehow her merry laughter had given him courage, so he raised his glance to look at her. She had been only pretty before now, but the blue of her eyes meeting his drove away his thoughts. "When will you be able to take off the eye shield?" she asked. "Why, how did you know?" he asked breathlessly. "I heard, and I read the baseball notes every day." "You do!" exclaimed Chase. Then he took off the shield and threw it away. "Oh, I'm glad, but are you sure it's time?" "Yes. I only waited because that is, I wanted you to see me first." This appeared to be an unfortunate remark, for Marjory colored a soft rose under her white cheeks, and began diligently to sort the lilies. "Mittie Maru will be glad," said Chase. "If only he could be cured too," she replied. "Do you know he suffers all the time, and sometimes dreadfully, yet he never says a word." "Yes, I know. Poor Mittie." Chase found it much easier to talk, now she avoided looking at him. "You were at the game yesterday. Do you like baseball?" "Oh, yes, indeed. I like the running, and I love to see the ball flying, but I don't understand much of the game." "Won't you let me teach you?" "Thank you, that would be nice, but I'm so stupid." "Stupid? You?" Chase laughed at the hint of such an impossibility. A blue flitting gleam flashed upon him from under the long lashes. "Oh, I am. Now, what is a bingo?" "A bingo? Why, that's baseball talk for a safe hit, a ball knocked safely out of the reach of a fielder." "What does Captain Winters mean when he hops round the base and yells 'Mugg's Landing! Irish stew! Raz pataz!'" "He's coaching, then, saying any old thing to try and rattle the pitcher." "Oh, is that it? What do you do with a base after you steal it?" "Stealing a base means to run from first to second, or from second to third without being put out. It really means stealing the distance, not the base." "What's a foul?" "A ball hit any way back of the white lines, running from home plate to first and third base." "What's a knocker? A fellow who gives the ball a knock?" "That's more baseball talk. A fellow who speaks ill of another is a knocker." "Oh, but doesn't he play the game too? I heard Captain Winters say he was captain and first knocker. I'm surprised about him. He has such a nice face." "Captain Winters meant that he was the first batter." "Then why did he say he was first knocker?" "Oh, you see I'm stupid. I knew you'd see it." "I haven't seen it." "You have. You as much as said so. I won't go to any more games." The flash of reproachful fire and the glimpse of a petulant face that accompanied the words caused a sinking of Chase's heart. What in the world had he said? "Marjory!" he cried. Then, at the sound of his own voice, at his boldness in so addressing her, he halted and began to fumble over his wet shoes and squeeze the water out of his coat. There was a long silence. He dared not look up. How quiet she was! How angry she must be! "We had better row home," she said at last. He squared his shoulders and pulled hard on the oars. The little red boat flew over the placid water, leaving a troubled wake. Fast as he rowed, he thought it a long way to the maple landing. All the way he never looked up or spoke. He could not think very connectedly. He only knew a terrible calamity had befallen him. He moored the boat and turned to help her out. Marjory glanced at him over a great load of pond lilies which she held with both arms. At the very top of the load, just under her lips, lay the pink lily. "Take it," she said. "What?" Chase stammered. "The pink one." "Then it's all right," cried Chase, taking the lily. "You're not angry? Because you said I was stupid? Oh, no. I didn't say so, but I meant about the You're the stupid one." She tripped up the bank and turned again with her blue gaze shining above the lilies. "I'm having a little party to morrow night. Will you come?" Yes, yes, I'll come, thank you. Good bye." Then the blue eyes and the blue dress were gone. Chase had nothing to prove that they had been there except the pink lily, which he clasped close to make sure of its reality. She had told him to take it, and she meant it to be his. Keep it forever. He tramped the meadows like one possessed. The sunlight dazzled him. The river shone like silver. The meadows gleamed white and gold. A glamour lay upon the world. The winds blew sweet in his face. The blue sky came down to meet the horizon like a deep azure curtain. Overhead, all around, sounded a low, soft, steady hum. To him it was music. He ran through the clover field and burst upon Mittie Maru at his dinner task. "Mittie, I was never so glad to see you. I've been on the river, been boating. Pond lilies. See this pink one? Isn't it lovely? I fell in trying to reach it. She gave it to me. Isn't that great? And we had a quarrel. I called her Marjorie or stupid or something, and we didn't speak for an age. I was sick. Then she gave me this, bless her, and Mittie, she's asked me to her party. It's tomorrow night. She really asked me. Oh, say," yelled Mittie with all his might, "cut it out, will you? Have I been plugging your game with her for 2 weeks just to be mushed over like this? I knew you had it bad, but I'll be dinged if I thought you'd go dotty. You're up in the air. Steady up, old man. If you get rattled this way in the first inning, what'll you do when they tie the score along about the fifth? Miss Marjorie's got a raft of fellers as ain't no wonder, and that preacher guy I don't like is settin' the pace. Come down out of the air, Chase me Romeo. Keep cool, play hard, and along about the eighth hit one over the fence and put the game on ice. Now have some dinner with your Uncle Dudley." End of Chapter 10.